You are breathing right now, but have you ever wondered if the very air around you is only being generated the moment you notice it? That the world you trust, your walls, your memories, your own heartbeat might not exist until something forces it to load. In computer code, glitches happen when systems struggle to maintain coherence, patching errors with invisible shortcuts. What if reality itself is doing the same? What if everything you see is not the whole program of existence, but a fragile collection of patches stitched together to keep you from noticing the cracks? Tonight, on The Present Path, we wander into the unsettling theories suggesting that what we call reality is nothing more than a glitch, one barely holding itself together. As you listen, ask yourself, if reality is only a patchwork, then what is waiting underneath once it finally falls apart? Fragile code of existence. Imagine for a moment that everything you see, hear, and touch is no more stable than a line of code in a fragile program. Code, after all, is not absolute. It is a sequence of instructions that holds together only so long as it is continuously executed without error. If a line misfires, the system doesn't unravel instantly, it often covers itself, creating a temporary fix that hides the flaw from the user. Could it be that reality, as you live it, functions in the same way? That the solidity of your table, the continuity of your thoughts, even the sound of this voice in your ears, are only executions of a vast invisible system struggling to hold itself in coherence? Think about it. We already know the physical world is not as solid as it appears. At the atomic level, matter is mostly empty space. Protons, neutrons, and electrons whirl in improbable patterns, bound together by forces we barely understand. What feels like strength is in truth tension. And what if that tension is not simply physics, but a kind of programming, a constant recalculation, keeping the illusion from dissolving? If the underlying code of reality slipped, even for a fraction of a second, what would you experience? Would the walls ripple like corrupted pixels? Would your memory skip back a frame, erasing what you thought just happened? Or worse, would you even notice? In computing, glitches are strange precisely because they don't always destroy. Sometimes they create patterns that were never intended. A missing texture in a video game replaces a detailed surface with a blank void. An error in a physics engine makes a character fall endlessly through the ground. The system doesn't stop existing, it continues, but what you see exposes the fact that the code was never as flawless as you assumed. When you feel déjà vu, when you walk into a room and sense that something is oddly off but cannot say what, are you experiencing the same kind of glitch? Now consider memory itself. Every recollection you have is not a recording, but a reconstruction. Each time you remember, your brain is rewriting, filling in gaps, patching errors. It is less like retrieving a perfect file, and more like executing fragile code over and over. Errors creep in, the edges blur, some details vanish. Yet you still trust the whole. What if your trust in memory is a small-scale mirror of the trust you place in reality itself? Just as you cannot see the edits and gaps in your recollections, perhaps you cannot perceive the subtle rewirings of existence as it struggles to maintain itself, moment by moment. There is also the unsettling truth of perception. Your eyes do not see the world directly. They capture light, which is inverted, filtered, and reconstructed in the brain. Your ears don't capture sound itself. They translate vibrations into electrical signals, which your brain then interprets as voices, wind, music. In other words, everything you believe to be external reality is already mediated, re-encoded, and displayed back to you. But if reality is already this fragile, already this dependent on systems interpreting signals, what stops it from being nothing more than a code base too? Perhaps the senses aren't just unreliable, they are complicit. They shield you from noticing the cracks, redirecting your awareness away from the unstable ground beneath existence. And what of physics? The laws of nature are astonishing in their elegance, but they are also suspiciously fine-tuned. Constants, from the charge of the electron to the force of gravity, are balanced on razor-thin margins that allow life, planets, and stars to exist. Too precise, some argue, to be an accident. If these values drifted by even a fraction, the system would collapse. It is almost as though the code of reality is constantly recalculated, error-corrected, and stabilized, holding everything together in a state of precarious balance. Could this fine-tuning itself be a sign of fragility, a system always on the brink of revealing its flaws? In your daily life, you rarely think about these questions. The chair you sit on supports you. The ground beneath your feet doesn't dissolve. The stars burn steadily in the night sky, but this very consistency may be the illusion. Just as you never see the thousands of background calculations keeping a computer program from crashing, you may never glimpse the hidden scaffolding that keeps reality running smoothly, until, that is, something slips. A glitch so small it feels like nothing. A misplaced object. A skipped moment. An inexplicable coincidence. You shrug, dismiss it, and move on. But what if those are the brief windows when the fragile code falters? This idea echoes in philosophy and science alike. Nick Bostrom's simulation argument, quantum physics wave-particle duality, and even the Buddhist teaching of impermanence, all circle the same question: is reality self-sustaining, or is it fragile, glitching, and constantly repairing itself so that you never wake up to its instability? If the latter is true, then perhaps you are not living in a stable universe at all. You are living in a patchwork, a program of existence always seconds away from failure, yet somehow holding together long enough for you to believe it is eternal. And so, every time you breathe, every time you blink, every time you move through space, you might be participating in a fragile execution of cosmic code. The program hasn't crashed yet, but maybe, just maybe, one day you will be there when it does. Pixels behind the curtain. When you look at a screen, what you see appears whole, a vivid image, a smooth landscape, a moving character. But behind that illusion are nothing more than pixels, tiny squares of light arranged in patterns that your brain interprets as reality. Now extend that thought. What if the world you live in, the streets, the trees, the people, and even your own reflection, are not so different? What if everything you perceive as continuous matter is in truth just pixels, or their quantum equivalent, rendered only when observed? Consider the peculiar fact that your eyes have limits. They cannot perceive ultraviolet or infrared light, nor can they see beyond a narrow field of resolution. Yet the brain fills in the gaps. The blind spot where the optic nerve connects to the retina does not appear as a hole in your vision. Instead, your brain patches it seamlessly, painting over the absence with fabricated detail. You never see the missing pixels, because the system is designed to hide them. Isn't it suspicious, then, that reality itself may be operating under a similar principle, generating only the parts that are necessary, only the areas where attention is focused, leaving the rest blank until called upon? Quantum physics hints at this. Particles do not seem to exist as definite things until measured. Until observed, they linger as probabilities, waves of potential. The act of looking is the act of rendering, collapsing uncertainty into something definite. Like a video game engine that spawns detail only when the player steps into range, the universe may be conserving its resources, displaying only the pixels that matter at the moment. Why waste energy rendering the entire cosmos, when you only ever experience a tiny patch of it at once? Think of walking into a new room. For a split second it feels unfamiliar, like a level loading just beyond the edge of your awareness. The furniture seems too arranged, the air too suddenly still, as though it was waiting for you. Or imagine driving down a long empty road at night. The darkness swallows everything except the few meters lit by your headlights. Do you ever wonder if the world beyond that circle of light even exists, or if it materializes only as you approach? In computing, these illusions are practical. Rendering every detail of an environment at once would overwhelm the processor, so only what the user needs is displayed. But in life, the implications are staggering. If the universe is pixelated at some hidden level, Planck lengths, quantum grids, or some deeper digital substrate, then the reality you know is not infinite, continuous, or solid. It is a mosaic, stitched from fragments, each piece lighting up only when you look. And then there are glitches, moments when the curtain slips. You glance at a clock twice and see the second-hand pause, a phenomenon known as chronostasis. You catch movement in your peripheral vision, but when you turn, nothing is there. You feel the uncanny déjà vu, as if you've stepped into a repeated frame. These may not be accidents of perception, but system errors, small hiccups in the pixel rendering of reality. For a moment, you glimpse the machinery beneath the curtain, before it quickly restabilizes, convincing you it was only your imagination. But imagination itself may be the most convincing patch of all. Your dreams render entire worlds with no effort, every night, from mountains to oceans, faces to voices. If the brain can simulate a universe within itself, what stops a larger system from simulating the brain? What stops the pixels behind your perception from being the very same kind of projected light, calculated in real time, only to vanish when you look away? So when you reach out and touch the surface of your desk, remember, it feels solid, only because your senses are interpreting electrical repulsions between atoms. You don't touch matter, you touch fields, stitched into place like pixels aligning into an image, and what you call solidity may simply be the curtain holding itself together, fragile, momentary, but convincing enough for you to believe that what you see is real. One day, however, you might catch a frame that doesn't belong, a background detail that wasn't supposed to load, a person's words that echo before they speak them, a shadow in the corner of your vision that flickers like a broken pixel. In that instant, you won't just question your mind, you'll question the pixels behind the curtain, and the entire system that keeps them glowing. Errors masked as memory. Memory feels like the strongest proof of continuity. You believe you are the same person today that you were yesterday, last week, or 10 years ago, because you remember the arc of your story. But what if memory itself is not continuity, but a clever patch, an error masked by reconstruction, much like corrupted data hidden by a system's self-repair? Neuroscience tells us your memories are not stored as perfect files waiting to be opened. Instead, each recall is an act of rewriting. The brain reconstructs events from scattered fragments, blending sensation, emotion, and interpretation into something that feels whole. But with every retrieval, details can shift. A shirt that was blue becomes red, a phrase is misquoted, a face softened or sharpened by time. The unsettling part is that you never notice these alterations. To you, the memory feels real. In truth, the system has concealed its error by presenting you with a patched version of the past. Imagine your mind as a vast archive, where some files have corrupted sectors. Rather than showing you the empty gaps, your system fills them in with plausible details. The missing becomes invisible, the broken seamlessly smoothed over, a magician's trick, not to dazzle, but to preserve coherence. Without it, you would notice the instability of existence itself. Perhaps memory's fragility is not a flaw of biology, but a design principle to prevent the user from glimpsing how incomplete the rendering of reality truly is. Now consider déjà vu. Scientists say it is the brain mistaking a present moment for a memory, but could it be something else? A frame repeated by error, a scene replayed because the system had to reload it, and you caught the overlap. You think it is your memory betraying you, but maybe it is reality showing you its glitch. This is not limited to the brain. History too is full of masked errors. Collective memories of events shift and distort, and what remains in textbooks is often a patched narrative, stitched together by selective forgetting and repetition. What we call culture is, in many ways, a shared error correction, stories told and retold until the cracks are plastered over. You never see the unrendered frames of history, you see only the smoothed film reel. If this is true, then identity itself may be no more than a patchwork of masked errors. You believe you are coherent, consistent, because you remember your story, but your story is built on fabrications, reconstructions, gaps disguised as wholeness. Like a corrupted file system that convinces the user it is flawless, reality may be presenting you with a stable version of yourself, even as the underlying structure falters. Think about those moments when memory betrays you outright. You insist you left your keys on the counter, only to find them elsewhere. You are certain you had a conversation that others swear never happened. These are not just lapses, they are potential seams where the mask slipped. The system rushed to cover its tracks, rewriting your sense of the past to preserve the illusion of stability. You call it forgetfulness. But what if it is maintenance? In computing, an error log exists, but users rarely see it. The system quietly patches issues behind the scenes. Memory may function the same way, not as a reliable record, but as a continuous process of error correction, hiding the glitches of reality itself. You are not remembering, you are being fed the latest patched version of your own past. And so the question becomes, if memory is a mask, then how much of your life has actually happened the way you believe? Are your earliest memories genuine, or reconstructions of reconstructions, patched so many times they bear no resemblance to their origins? Are your relationships, your identity, even your most cherished experiences, nothing more than stable illusions, glitches rewritten so convincingly you cannot tell they were ever broken? The terrifying possibility is this. You are not living in a reality that is stable and continuous. You are living in one that is fragile, broken, and constantly repaired, with memory itself acting as the mask that hides the flaws. Every time you trust a recollection, you are placing your faith in a system that may be concealing its errors not only from you, but from itself. Randomness or repair. At first glance, randomness feels like proof of authenticity. When a dice rolls, when rain scatters against a window, when strangers cross your path in unpredictable patterns, These seem like signs of a chaotic, unscripted world. But what if randomness is not chaos at all? What if it is repair, the system's way of filling in the blanks when it cannot render precise detail? In programming, when data is missing or corrupted, systems often substitute placeholders. A glitch in a video game may replace a missing texture with a default gray box. An error in code might be patched with a fallback value, random enough to keep the system running without drawing attention. The player accepts it, moves on, and rarely realizes that something was missing in the first place. Could randomness in life function the same way? Could it be a mask, concealing instability beneath the surface of existence? Consider how often chance steers your life. You flip a coin, meet someone by accident, or stumble across a book that changes everything. It feels spontaneous, but perhaps it is not spontaneity at all. Perhaps it is the system, improvising, patching an incomplete frame with the illusion of randomness, so you never notice the absence of structure. If true, then luck, coincidence, and chance are not natural phenomena. They are repairs, camouflage against collapse. Quantum physics deepens the mystery. At the smallest scales, particles behave unpredictably. They appear in multiple states, vanish and reappear, tunnel through barriers. Scientists call it quantum randomness. But is it randomness, or a system repairing itself in real time? If the universe is fragile code, then uncertainty may not be its flaw, but its survival strategy. Each unpredictable outcome is the program rewriting itself, shuffling data so you never glimpse the cracks underneath. Think about those moments when randomness feels too precise to be chance. The stranger who says the exact words you needed to hear, the song that plays at the exact moment you are thinking of it, the accident that saves you from a worse fate. We call these synchronicities, but could they be signs of repair? System adjustments disguised as coincidence, filling gaps in reality's broken sequence. Your brain itself works in a similar way. Neurons fire in unpredictable patterns, generating what feels like creativity, imagination, free will. Yet deeper studies show that even creativity often relies on randomness, noise injected into the system to prevent collapse into rigidity. Perhaps reality itself is operating under the same principle, disguising repairs as freedom, concealing corrections beneath the mask of chance. And then there is chaos theory. Tiny differences in initial conditions can lead to massive divergences in outcome. A butterfly flaps its wings, and weeks later, a storm emerges on the other side of the planet. This sensitivity feels like randomness, but perhaps it is better understood as recalculation. A small instability forces the system to improvise, rerouting the trajectory of reality into something new. What we call chaos may be nothing more than repair on a cosmic scale. But if randomness is repair, then what does that say about your life? That the unpredictable twists of your story are not genuine chaos, but maintenance. That chance encounters, sudden losses, inexplicable strokes of luck are not written into the universe, but patched into place to cover what was never stable. It would mean your world is not free-flowing, but constantly managed errors rewritten as accidents, collapses disguised as unpredictability. Look closely at your own memories of randomness. Can you recall a time when something felt too convenient, too perfectly timed? A bus that broke down just before disaster, a missed call that changed your path forever. These are not coincidences. They may be repairs. The system noticed a flaw in the unfolding sequence and repatched the outcome with something plausible. You accepted it as chance, but in truth you may have brushed against the hidden machinery, the improvisational repairs that keep the illusion intact. And so, randomness is not proof of freedom or authenticity. It is the most convincing mask of all. Every roll of the dice, every chance meeting, every chaotic twist may be nothing more than error correction disguised as unpredictability. The system keeps patching, and you keep believing. Time sits hidden patching. Time feels like the most reliable constant in your life. It ticks forward, second by second, minute by minute, never skipping, never stopping. But what if this trust is misplaced? What if time itself is not continuous, but patched, stitched together moment by moment to hide its fractures? Think about how a film works. What you see as a flowing story is actually a sequence of still frames, projected so quickly, your mind smooths them into motion. The gaps between frames are invisible to you. Could time function in the same way? Could what you experience as a seamless flow be nothing more than snapshots, patched together by reality to prevent you from seeing the spaces in between? There are hints. Studies show that the brain does not perceive time as a constant stream but in chunks, called temporal windows. A sound, a flash of light, a movement. They are integrated into intervals of perception. Your awareness fills the gaps, giving you the illusion of continuity. But if even your mind patches time into wholeness, perhaps the universe itself is doing the same. What you call the present may not be a river, but a collage of frames, rapidly stitched into coherence. Consider déjà vu, that uncanny sensation of having lived a moment before. Some scientists say it is the brain misfiring, but another possibility is more unsettling. You are catching the patch. The system is reloading a frame, repeating it to stabilize continuity, and you notice the overlap. For a second you glimpse the stitches of time before they are hidden again. And then there are time slips. People report moments when minutes vanish without explanation, or when time feels stretched and distorted. You've experienced it yourself, hours disappearing in a blink, or seconds dragging into eternity. We treat this as perception, but perhaps it is structural. Perhaps the system is recalibrating, patching gaps in time to prevent collapse, and your consciousness senses the edit. Even physics hints at instability. The laws of relativity reveal that time bends and stretches depending on speed and gravity. It is not absolute, but elastic, fragile, malleable. And at the quantum level, the very fabric of space-time may not be continuous but granular, like pixels of existence. Each patch of time is rendered only when needed, stitched into the larger sequence, convincing you of flow where only fragments exist. Imagine, then, that every memory you have, every moment you live, is not a chain but a patchwork. The system ensures you never notice the jumps by blending one frame into the next, like a film splicing cut so smoothly you never see the edit. What you call yesterday may not be yesterday at all. It may be a reconstruction, a patch installed to give you the illusion of a consistent past. This raises a terrifying possibility. Time may not be moving forward at all. It may be standing still. A single fragile instant, endlessly patched with fabricated continuity. You feel motion, you feel progression, but perhaps you are standing inside one eternal glitch, endlessly re-rendered to convince you it is flowing. And what of the future? We think of it as unwritten, waiting to unfold. But if time is patched, then the future may not exist until it needs to, stitched in at the moment of noticing. Like pixels rendered only when observed, the moments ahead may be fabricated only when you arrive, not before. The past, too, may not be a fixed archive, but a reconstruction patched into memory, changing as the system requires. So next time you glance at a clock, notice the seconds tick. Do you truly believe they are moving smoothly? Or could it be that each tick is a patch, each moment stitched over emptiness, each instant fabricated to cover the gaps? Perhaps the reason you trust time so deeply is because the system has done its work too well, hiding the stitches, smoothing the frames, concealing the glitch beneath the flow. And yet, in rare moments, dreams, déjà vu, distortions, you catch a glimpse of the truth. Time is not a river. It is a fragile patchwork, and without those patches, reality itself might unravel. Consciousness as debugger. In every complex system, there must be a way to detect and correct errors. A program without debugging quickly collapses under the weight of its own flaws. But what if consciousness itself, the awareness flickering behind your eyes, is not just a passenger in reality, but the debugger of the system? What if you exist not to live in reality, but to stabilize it? Think about how your attention works. You don't perceive everything around you at once. You select, you focus, and as you focus, details become clear. This feels natural, but what if it is functional? Your awareness might be more than passive observation. It might be the very act that holds reality together. Like a debugging tool that highlights weak spots in code, consciousness may stabilize the fragile rendering of existence by simply looking. The observer effect in quantum physics offers a glimpse of this. Particles do not have fixed states until observed. The act of measurement changes them. But who, or what, is measuring? When you direct your attention, you are collapsing probabilities into definite form. You are not just noticing the world. You are forcing the system to resolve itself, patching instability into solidity. In this way, your awareness may be the program's error checker, constantly searching for cracks and sealing them by noticing. Consider moments when your perception seems to glitch. You mishear a word, then suddenly it becomes clear. You glimpse something in your peripheral vision, and when you turn, it resolves into a coherent object. In these microseconds, your consciousness is debugging, catching an error, forcing a patch, stabilizing the rendering so that you can continue believing in the solidity of your surroundings. Without awareness, perhaps the system would collapse into noise. This may also explain why human beings crave meaning. We are not content with randomness. We impose patterns, symbols, stories. Every constellation, every myth, every scientific law is a way of debugging chaos, patching noise with coherence. Consciousness demands order, because order is the glue holding the system together. Without it, the fragile code would reveal its instability, and the illusion would shatter. Pause for a moment. As you're listening right now, I want you to become aware of where you are. What time is it? What location are you in? Your room, your city, your corner of the world. Notice how, in calling your attention to it, your reality feels sharper, more anchored. That is consciousness acting as debugger. Until I asked, those details hovered in the background, fuzzy, unrendered. Now, in focusing, you've forced the system to lock them into clarity. This act of noticing may be more than psychological. It may be existential maintenance. Dreams provide another clue. When you dream, the system runs without full awareness. And what happens? The world becomes unstable. Time loops, physics bends, logic falters. Only when you realize you are dreaming, when lucidity dawns, does the dream stabilize. Consciousness steps in, debugging the fragile narrative. If this is true in sleep, could it not also be true in waking life? Could your awareness be the reason the world does not fall apart? And then there is meditation. When you quiet the mind, when you sustain awareness on a single breath or sensation, the world feels sharper, more real, more alive. Ancient traditions taught that consciousness itself is the ground of reality, the force that shapes existence. Modern science skirts the edges of this, wondering if awareness is fundamental, not emergent. If it is the debugger, then perhaps it is not inside reality. It is the very mechanism that keeps reality patched and coherent. But what does this mean for you? It means that your act of noticing is not trivial. Every glance, every moment of attention, may be stabilizing the fragile system of existence. You are not just an observer, you are part of the code's survival. Reality holds itself together not alone, but through you, through the debugging force of your consciousness. And yet, this also raises a haunting question. What happens if you stop noticing? If awareness drifts, if debugging ceases, does the system collapse? Do the pixels fall apart? Do the errors bleed through? Perhaps this is why sleep is so precarious, why death is so mysterious. Without consciousness, without the debugger, the fragile code may no longer need to patch itself, and what remains might not be recognizable as reality at all. Physics on a fault line. You trust the laws of physics because they appear absolute. Gravity pulls you down. Light travels at a constant speed. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. These principles feel like bedrock, the unshakable foundation of reality. But what if physics is not bedrock at all? What if it is a fault line, rules patched over cracks, a system of consistency holding back chaos? Think of how computer systems handle errors. When a line of code threatens to break the program, developers install safeguards, error handlers, patches, and corrections that keep the user from seeing the crash. Could the laws of physics be nothing more than reality's error handlers, perfectly stable on the surface, but constantly working behind the scenes to keep the system from collapsing? Take gravity, for instance. It is the most familiar force, you rely on it every second, yet it remains the least understood. Newton described it as a pull. Einstein reframed it as curved space-time. Quantum theory still cannot explain it. Why is gravity so strange, so resistant to integration with the other forces? Perhaps because it is not fundamental at all. Perhaps gravity is a patch, an error correction that ensures matter clings together, rather than drifting into unrendered chaos. Or consider light. The speed of light is supposedly constant, an unbreakable limit. But why? Why should there be a universal speed cap woven into the fabric of existence? In computing, speed caps are often imposed to stabilize fragile systems, preventing overloads. Could the cosmic speed limit be the same? A patch ensuring coherence, a safeguard to prevent reality from processing faster than it can render. Quantum mechanics, too, exposes fault lines. Particles flicker between states, vanish and reappear, entangle across impossible distances. The equations work, but the logic behind them defies intuition. Physicists describe it as weirdness, but perhaps it is not weirdness. It is fragility, a system struggling to keep coherence, applying patches so quickly that the illusion of stability holds, even though the foundation is fractured. Then there is entropy, the rule that everything moves toward disorder. On the surface, it feels inevitable. But what if entropy is not a fundamental truth, but a safety valve? In computing, when a program cannot maintain order, it sometimes dissolves complexity into randomness to prevent catastrophic crashes. Entropy may be the same, the universe's way of offloading instability, disguising it as natural decay. And yet, the most suspicious clue of all is fine-tuning. The constants of physics, the mass of the proton, the strength of electromagnetism, the cosmological constant, are balanced with uncanny precision. If they shifted by even a fraction, stars would not burn, matter would not form, life would not exist. Physicists debate why this is so, but one possibility is simple. These values are not fixed laws, they are patches, parameters tweaked to stabilize an unstable system. Physics is not eternal truth, but adaptive error correction. Think about earthquakes. On the surface, the ground feels solid, reliable, but deep beneath, fault lines strain and shift, and one day the pressure breaks through. Physics may be the same. What feels like unshakable law may actually be a system under stress, patched and corrected, but always at risk of revealing its instability. Perhaps this explains why breakthroughs in physics always lead to stranger mysteries. Each time a law seems complete, anomalies emerge. Dark matter, dark energy, unobservable forces that make up most of the universe yet remain invisible. These may not be hidden substances at all, but signs of the system straining under its own rules. Dark matter could be an artifact of a patch, dark energy the byproduct of error correction. The universe may not be expanding from a perfect Big Bang, but from the ongoing effort to stabilize a fault-ridden system. So when you trust the ground beneath your feet, remember, physics may not be ground at all. It may be the scaffolding, the patchwork, the fragile framework holding back collapse. You live on fault lines, laws that feel unbreakable but are perhaps just clever repairs. If the system ever falters, you won't just see anomalies. You will see the fault lines split open, exposing the chaos they've been hiding all along. The unstable observer. We like to believe the world exists independently of us. Mountains rise, rivers flow, stars burn in silence, whether or not you are there to see them. But what if that belief is false? What if the observer is not a witness to reality, but its fragile trigger, and the very act of observing is unstable? In physics, the observer effect shows that measurement changes the outcome. Particles shift, collapse, or entangle depending on whether they are watched. This isn't metaphorical, it is built into the mathematics of quantum theory. But what if this isn't just about particles? What if your own observation of reality is the patch keeping it together, and the cracks appear whenever attention falters? Think about how perception really works. Your senses never give you the whole picture. Your vision only captures a tiny slice of the electromagnetic spectrum. Your hearing filters out frequencies beyond your narrow range. Even your sense of touch is limited to a fraction of the energy around you. The truth is, you never experience the world directly. You experience the version that your mind renders. You are both the viewer and the system generating what is viewed. But if that is true, then the observer is not stable. It is fragile, and when the observer destabilizes, so too does reality. This fragility explains those fleeting moments of disorientation. You stare at a familiar word until it suddenly looks alien, a string of nonsense symbols. You repeat a phrase until it loses all meaning. You step into a room, and for a second it feels unfamiliar, as if you've never been there before. These are not just quirks of perception, they are glitches in observation. The system wobbles, the rendering shakes, and for a second you see the instability of the observer itself. Dreams show us the same truth. Inside a dream, your mind generates a world so convincing that you rarely question it. But the moment you realize you are dreaming, the illusion begins to falter. Sometimes it stabilizes with lucidity, but often it collapses. Why? Because the observer became aware of its own role in generating the dream. Awareness destabilized the simulation. Could waking life be the same? If you became truly aware of your role as observer, would the system crack under the weight of your noticing? Even neuroscience hints at this. Studies show that consciousness is not a unified flow but a patchwork of brain processes stitched together. Attention blinks in microseconds, creating gaps you never perceive. Yet somehow you believe you are continuously present. Your stability as an observer is an illusion, a patchwork error correction convincing you of coherence. but the seams are always there, waiting to show themselves. And here lies the paradox. You are required to observe reality to keep it stable, but your observation is unstable. You are the anchor, and yet you wobble. You are the glue, and yet you crack. The system depends on you but cannot fully trust you. This explains why reality feels fragile at its edges. Shadows flicker. Time slips. Randomness invades. These are not flaws in the system. They are reflections of the instability of its observer. Perhaps this is why some spiritual traditions insist the self is an illusion, the observer you believe yourself to be. The stable eye behind your eyes may not exist in the way you think. It may be a placeholder, a glitch patched into place so that observation can continue. You feel stable, but beneath that feeling is a constant improvisation, the system recalibrating to keep the illusion alive. So when you close your eyes tonight and drift towards sleep, remember, you are not merely watching reality, you are rendering it. And you, the observer, are not a stable lens but a flickering glitch yourself, patched into being so that the program can continue pretending it is whole. Gaps, disguised as continuity. Reality feels seamless. You wake, move through your day, speak, think, and act without ever noticing a break. But what if this seamlessness is only a trick? What if existence is not continuous but full of gaps, gaps so carefully disguised that you never notice them? Your own mind already works this way. Every second, your eyes blink. For those fractions of a second, the world disappears. Yet you never experience blackness, never notice the void. The brain stitches the frames together, filling the gap so smoothly that it feels continuous. What if reality is doing the same, hiding vast emptiness between moments, stitching the gaps with fabricated continuity? Consider memory again. You do not recall every instant of your life. Most of it is gone, skipped, erased, discarded. Yet when you think of your past, it feels whole, as though nothing is missing. That feeling is the disguise. The mind fills the gaps with coherence, covering the holes with illusion. Reality may be built on the same principle, most of it absent, only fragments real, the rest disguised as a flow you trust without question. In computing, this is compression. A video file does not contain every pixel of every frame. It stores key points and fills the gaps with approximation. The illusion is good enough that you never notice. Could your life be compressed the same way? Perhaps only fragments exist. The key frames and everything between is patched in, rendered only when needed. The gaps are everywhere, but they are hidden beneath the mask of continuity. Think about those strange moments when you lose time. You are driving a familiar route, and suddenly you're at your destination with no memory of the journey. You were conscious, but only partially. The system disguised the gap, convinced you of seamlessness, but in truth, hours of your life slipped into nothingness. This is not an exception. It may be the rule. The illusion of continuity is patched over countless voids, gaps filled with the placeholder of familiarity. Even physics suggests this. Time may not be continuous but quantized, divided into indivisible units, Planck moments that flicker reality into existence frame by frame. If so, then the universe is not a river but a series of gaps disguised by stitching. The flow you trust is only the illusion of wholeness, created by the patches between fragments. But the disguise sometimes falters. Deja vu, missing time, strange dislocations. These may be moments when the gaps briefly show themselves. You notice the jump, the edit, the splice. For a second the disguise slips, and you glimpse the emptiness beneath. You dismiss it, but the truth remains. Continuity is not natural, it is engineered. This raises a haunting question. How much of your life has never truly existed? How many hours were nothing but gaps disguised by memory, stitched over by the system's insistence on coherence? Perhaps what you call existence is less than you imagine. Perhaps you live only in fragments, illusions strung together, with vast emptiness in between. And yet, you never notice. The disguise is flawless, the stitching precise. You believe in a seamless world because the gaps are expertly hidden. But once you know they are there, the illusion weakens. Every blink, every lost moment, every sudden skip in thought becomes a reminder. Reality is not whole, it is patchwork, with gaps beneath the surface, forever disguised as continuity. Collisions of simulated matter. Touch the table in front of you. It feels solid, unyielding, as though matter itself is an undeniable truth. But physics reveals something stranger. Atoms are mostly empty space, their solidity nothing more than the repulsion of electrical charges. In other words, you never truly touch matter. You touch the simulation of resistance. What if all collisions in the universe, every step you take, every object you hold, are not interactions of real substances, but simulated calculations, patched to prevent reality from falling apart? Think of a video game. Characters walk on floors that aren't truly solid, but coded to prevent them from falling through. Collisions are not physical, they are mathematical. When a sword strikes armor, the engine calculates the impact, plays a sound, shows sparks. Nothing real happens. Only the illusion of interaction is displayed. Could the same be true for your life? Every collision, your feet against the ground, raindrops against glass, planets against the pull of gravity, may be nothing more than pre-calculated interactions rendered in real time. This would explain why physics is so consistent, yet so mysterious. Collisions obey conservation laws, momentum, energy, symmetry. But perhaps these laws are not intrinsic truths. They are parameters coded into the simulation to ensure coherence. Without them, the illusion would fracture. The solidity you trust is not solidity at all. It is a patch, a programmed response calculated to keep you from falling through the emptiness beneath. Consider the strangeness of particle physics. When protons smash in colliders, the debris they produce is not predictable in detail but follows probabilities. Each collision generates outcomes as though the system is improvising, filling in possibilities to maintain the illusion. What you call randomness may be the engine's rendering process, simulated matter colliding in ways that disguise the instability of the underlying code. Even on a human scale, collisions feel suspiciously engineered. Drop a glass, and it shatters in intricate fragments, each shard following patterns of stress, energy and symmetry. The detail is overwhelming, far beyond what you could calculate, and yet the system performs flawlessly every time. Why such perfection? Why should broken glass obey fractal geometry so precisely? Perhaps because the simulation must render plausible results. No matter the complexity, the collision isn't chaos. It's a patch, a scripted resolution. Think about your own body. When you stub your toe, pain surges instantly, a sharp jolt convincing you of the solidity of matter. But pain is not proof of solidity. It is a signal, an interpretation. The system must persuade you that collisions are real, so it generates suffering, convincing you with intensity what it cannot prove with truth. The sting is not reality, it is reinforcement. And then there are cosmic collisions. Galaxies crash together, stars explode, planets are torn apart. These are the grandest spectacles of physics, yet we see them only as light arriving millions of years later, a delayed rendering of violence. But if reality is a fragile code, then perhaps even these collisions are not what they appear. Perhaps the light is not evidence of substance, but a visual patch, a playback rendered so convincingly that you accept it as history. This leads to a chilling possibility. If collisions are simulated, then so too is resistance. The chair beneath you, the floor you stand on, the food you bite into, all of it may be fabricated responses, collision detection systems convincing you of solidity. Without them, you would drift through emptiness, slipping into the gaps where reality cannot hold itself together. But sometimes, the simulation falters. You drop something, and for a split second, it seems to hover. You misjudge the distance to a wall, and feel a jarring mismatch between touch and sight. These are the tiny slips when collision detection fails, when the patch almost doesn't load. You dismiss them as accidents, but perhaps they are reality exposing its fragility. So the next time you touch something solid, remember matter may not be real. Every collision may be nothing more than an algorithm, a patch to keep you grounded in a world that isn't grounded at all. The frame that flickers. Reality feels smooth, unbroken, like a film playing without interruption. But beneath the surface, every moment may be a frame, flickering too quickly for you to notice. What if existence itself is not continuous but a rapid sequence of renderings, frames stitched together so seamlessly that you mistake them for flow? And what if, sometimes the stitching slips, and you catch the flicker? Think of how old projectors worked. A reel of film spun, projecting 24 frames per second. Between each frame was darkness, but your eyes never saw it. Your mind blended the images, disguising the flicker as motion. Computers do the same with refresh rates. Lower the frame rate, and you see stutter. Raise it, and the illusion becomes seamless. Could your perception of reality be exactly that? A refresh rate so high you rarely glimpse the flicker, but when you do, it unsettles you. Consider the phenomenon of the stopped clock illusion. You glance quickly at a clock, and for a moment the second hand seems frozen before continuing. Scientists say your brain momentarily backfills vision. But could it be more? Could it be that you've caught reality between frames, seen the pause before the system rendered the next moment, the flicker hidden in the machinery of time? Think also of déjà vu, the sense of repetition, of living a moment twice, may not be memory, it may be a dropped frame, reality re-rendering itself, and you catching the flicker. The glitch is not in your brain, it's in the system struggling to disguise discontinuity. Even vision itself is built on flicker. The eyes do not perceive a smooth stream but snapshots captured in intervals, then patched together by the brain. Your sense of flow is not a reflection of reality, but a product of stitching. If your senses operate this way, why wouldn't the universe itself, what you call continuity, may be nothing more than a flickering projection, frames of existence spliced into coherence? And sometimes, the seams show. Have you ever stared at a light that seemed to pulse, though it was constant, or seen a screen flicker in the corner of your vision, while appearing steady head-on? These are not just tricks of the eye. They may be clues that you are watching existence at the edge of its refresh rate, glimpsing the stutter beneath the flow. Physics hints at this too. Time and space may not be continuous but quantized, divided into indivisible Planck units. If so, then the universe is a cosmic film reel, each instant a frame, each gap disguised by flicker. Continuity is an illusion created by speed, and you are trapped inside the projection. The terrifying possibility is this. The world may flicker constantly, but your mind is programmed to hide it from you. Every blink, every shift of attention, every moment your perception falters gives the system space to render the next frame. You are never experiencing reality directly. You are always a fraction of a second behind, watching the projection catch up to itself. But in rare moments, the disguise slips. You see the clock pause. You feel déjà vu. You sense the world hesitate for a breath before continuing. These are the flickers, the frames where continuity failed to cover its gaps. You shrug them off as quirks of perception. But what if they are the truest glimpses you will ever get? The proof that reality itself is not seamless but fragile, flickering, and barely holding itself together. So next time the world seems to stutter, don't look away too quickly. You may have just caught the curtain lifting, the frame that flickers, the glitch at the heart of existence. Quantum glitch theory. At the smallest scale of existence, the universe begins to look less like a machine and more like a malfunctioning program. Particles do not behave like solid building blocks, but like ghosts, appearing and vanishing, shifting states, entangling across space in ways that defy reason. To scientists, this is the strangeness of quantum mechanics, but to us, it looks like something else. The glitches of reality's code. Consider the double slit experiment. Fire particles at two slits, and they behave like waves, creating interference patterns. But the moment you observe them, they collapse into definite particles. The system changes its behavior depending on whether it is being watched. Doesn't that sound like a program conserving resources? Rendering in low detail when unobserved, snapping into precision only when attention demands it. The glitch is not in the particles. It is in the code that cannot reconcile two conflicting states at once. Quantum tunneling is another clue. Particles sometimes teleport through barriers they should never cross. Physics accepts this as probability, but from another angle, it looks like a rendering error. A character in a game slipping through a wall, a system unable to maintain collision integrity. Instead of crashing, the universe lets the glitch pass, patching it as a feature. Then, there's entanglement. Two particles separated by light years can mirror each other instantly, defying the speed of light. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. But what if it's not spooky at all? What if it's simply a shared pointer in the code? Two variables linked to the same underlying instruction. Change one, and the other updates, no matter how far apart they appear. To us it feels impossible. To the system, it's just efficient programming. Quantum fluctuations go further. Empty space is never truly empty. It seethes with particles popping in and out of existence, as though the program can't maintain a perfect vacuum. In video games, empty environments often flicker with rendering artifacts when not fully loaded. Reality, at the quantum level, may suffer the same instability, a restless background of glitches too small for the eye to see. The deeper we peer, the stranger it gets. Quantum uncertainty insists that particles have no definite position or momentum until measured. This isn't just a scientific puzzle. It is the mark of a system refusing to load unnecessary detail, like a game engine that generates terrain only when the player arrives. The universe withholds definition until observation demands it. It is not inefficiency. It is optimization. The glitch is disguised as mystery. And what about superposition? A particle existing in multiple states at once until observed. Schrödinger's cat, alive and dead simultaneously, waiting for the act of measurement to decide. To us, it feels paradoxical. To the system, it may simply be buffering. Two outcomes running in parallel until one collapses into the patch of continuity. When you step back, all of quantum theory looks less like a foundation and more like a patchwork. Rules that contradict classical physics, behaviors that defy intuition, outcomes that seem absurd, yet always work out in the math. It is as though we are studying not the source code, but the debugging logs, glimpsing the glitches that the system constantly repairs. The terrifying implication is this: if the quantum world is full of glitches, then everything built upon it, including you, is patched together from errors. Your body, your thoughts, your entire sense of reality may be fragile improvisations stacked atop unstable foundations. You exist only because the glitches haven't broken through. Yet every experiment, every particle collision, every measurement reminds us that the cracks are there. So when you hear the word quantum, don't think of mystery. Think of fragility. Think of a glitch disguised as law. A system forever on the brink of revealing that what we call physics is nothing more than error correction written into the very fabric of being, noise pretending to be order. When you listen to static on a radio, it sounds like meaningless noise, but sometimes, in the randomness, you think you hear a word, a phrase, even a voice. The mind is hungry for order, so it stitches patterns from chaos. What if reality itself is the same? What if the universe is not built on order, but on noise patched together to appear structured, when in truth it is unstable chaos, disguised as law? At its core, the cosmos appears suspiciously messy. Particles fluctuate, fields jitter, and quantum foam seethes with endless variation. From the deepest void to the hottest star, noise is everywhere. Yet somehow from this noise emerges balance, symmetry, laws, constants. But what if that balance is not natural? What if it is a patch? A system disguising chaos with order, so you never see the instability beneath. Consider your own brain. Neural activity is noisy, billions of firings surging unpredictably. Yet from this chaos arises thought, memory, identity. It feels coherent, but only because the mind constantly edits, filters, and masks the noise with stories. Could the same principle apply to the universe itself? Could physics, time, and space be stories stitched over the static of existence? Even mathematics hints at this. Chaos theory shows us that beneath apparent randomness, patterns emerge, fractals, spirals, self-similarity. But perhaps this is not proof of hidden order. Perhaps it is the illusion of order, like faces seen in clouds or constellations drawn across stars. The system takes noise and disguises it as meaning, convincing you that stability exists where none truly does. Think of music. A song feels smooth, but zoom in close enough, and it dissolves into vibrations, waves of air, chaotic fluctuations of pressure. It is only your mind that hears melody instead of noise. In the same way, the laws of physics may be nothing more than the illusion of a song, patterns carved from randomness, disguising the glitches beneath. This is why synchronicities unsettle us. A thought in your mind appears in the world. The phone rings with the voice you were just remembering. The symbol you dreamed shows up in the street. These coincidences may not be meaning at all. They may be noise misinterpreted as order, the system patching chaos with narratives that soothe you into believing reality is stable. But sometimes, the noise slips through, static in your vision when you close your eyes. Random thoughts intruding with no origin. Sensations that feel unanchored, unexplainable. These may be moments when the disguise weakens, when the noise beneath order briefly reveals itself. The system cannot always hide the instability. It can only hope you dismiss it. Even the cosmos reflects this fragility. Galaxies swirl in elegant spirals, yet the majority of the universe is filled with dark matter and dark energy, forces we cannot see, measure, or explain. Perhaps they are not forces at all, but noise too vast to be smoothed into pattern, a background static that cannot be disguised, so we invent names to hide the cracks. And if noise is the truth, then what does that mean for you? It means your life may not be as orderly as you believe. Your thoughts, choices, and even your sense of self may be fragile disguises over chaos. You are not the story you tell yourself. You are the noise pretending to be order, patched just well enough to feel whole. So next time you hear static, next time you notice coincidence, next time you sense the world pulsing with randomness, remember, you are not witnessing accidents within a stable order. You are glimpsing the truth of existence itself. Noise, forever patched with the illusion of law, holding reality together in fragile disguise. Paradoxes, as system bugs. Paradoxes have haunted human thought for centuries. They twist logic against itself, leaving you staring at contradictions that seem impossible to resolve. Philosophers treat them as puzzles. Scientists treat them as anomalies. But what if paradoxes are not intellectual games at all? What if they are system bugs? Glitches that reveal where reality's code cannot reconcile its own rules. Take Zeno's paradox. To cross a room, you must first travel half the distance, then half again and again infinitely. Logic says you should never arrive, yet you always do. The bug lies in the mismatch between infinite mathematics and finite experience. The patch is simple. Reality ignores the contradiction, letting you cross the room as if nothing were wrong. You never notice the bug, because the system conceals it with a functional shortcut. Or think of the liar's paradox. This statement is false. If it is true, then it must be false. If it is false, then it must be true. A logical loop with no exit. In computing, such loops crash programs, but in life, paradoxes exist without crashing reality. How? Because the system masks the error, treating it as unsolvable but harmless, like a bug that's logged but never fixed. Paradoxes are tolerated, hidden in plain sight, because patching them entirely would unravel the code. Quantum mechanics teems with these bugs. Particles are waves and particles at once. Schrödinger's cat is alive and dead until observed. Time flows forward, yet relativity allows it to bend backward. These contradictions should break the system, but instead they persist, patched by probability and measurement. You accept them as strange but true, never realizing you are witnessing bugs smoothed into features. Even your mind is full of paradoxes. You are one person, yet split between conscious and unconscious selves. You seek freedom, yet live bound by necessity. You crave meaning, yet know none is guaranteed. These contradictions do not destroy you because your brain patches them with stories, disguising the bugs as philosophy, religion, or identity. Without the patches, the paradoxes would drive you mad. With them, you carry on as though the system were stable. But sometimes, paradoxes expose the cracks. Think of time travel. If you go back and prevent your own birth, you cannot exist to travel back. Logic collapses. Physics falters. The paradox reveals that the system cannot handle recursive loops without breaking. Instead of resolving it, reality disguises time travel as impossible, not because it cannot be imagined, but because it would crash the code. The same happens in ethics. The trolley problem forces you to choose between killing one person or 5. Both options feel wrong, yet the system demands decision. Morality here exposes its fragility. It cannot be coded without contradictions. And so the paradox lingers, a bug unpatched, a reminder that order is an illusion sustained only by ignoring what cannot be reconciled. Even existence itself is paradoxical. You are both matter and consciousness, both limited and infinite in thought, both temporary and longing for permanence. To live is to embody contradiction. The patch is simple. You accept the paradox as mystery, disguise it with meaning, carry on as if the contradiction were not fatal. This is the secret of paradoxes. They are not harmless riddles. They are warnings. They are cracks in the system, bugs the code cannot fix, errors disguised as puzzles so you never suspect their danger. And every time you encounter one, you are brushing against the limits of reality's design. So when you stumble on a paradox, don't dismiss it as cleverness. Listen to it. It may be the system whispering its instability, showing you the seams. Paradoxes are not puzzles. They are bugs. And the more you notice them, the more you risk seeing through the disguise. Gravity sips error correction. Gravity feels like the most trustworthy force in your life. Drop something, and it falls. Step forward, and the ground holds you. Planets orbit stars, stars orbit galaxies. An invisible tether keeps the cosmos from dissolving into chaos. But what if gravity is not fundamental at all? What if it is error correction, reality's way of stitching matter together so the illusion doesn't collapse? Think about what gravity actually is. Newton said it was a force pulling objects together. Einstein said it was the warping of space-time itself. Yet even now, no one fully understands it. Quantum physics refuses to integrate it with the other forces. It resists unification, as though it does not belong with the rest. Could it be because gravity isn't a base law, but a patch, a program written over cracks in reality's rendering of matter? Imagine a video game. Without collision detection, characters would drift through the floor, objects would scatter, the world would unravel. So developers install physics engines, calculations that keep everything anchored. Gravity may be the universe's version of collision detection, a stabilizing correction preventing matter from slipping through the gaps. Without it, nothing would stay coherent. Planets, stars, even your body would drift into noise. Look at how suspiciously precise gravity is. It is weak compared to the other forces, yet just strong enough to hold galaxies together. It scales perfectly from apples falling from trees to planets orbiting the sun. Too strong, and the universe would collapse into black holes. Too weak, and stars could never form. The balance is razor thin, as if tuned not by nature, but by necessity, a parameter chosen to keep the simulation from breaking. And then, there are black holes. Places where gravity grows infinite, tearing matter, space, and even time apart. Why would a law of stability contain such instability within itself? Unless black holes are not natural objects, but crash sites, errors where gravity's patch fails, the system cannot render the correction smoothly, and the result is collapse. To us, it looks like mystery. To the system, it looks like failure. Dark matter deepens the suspicion. Galaxies spin so fast that by our equations they should fly apart. Yet they don't. To fix this, scientists invented the idea of invisible matter holding them together. But what if there is no hidden substance? What if dark matter is simply the patch itself, the unseen correction applied to stop the system from falling apart? It isn't matter, it's the error fix. Even your own body depends on this correction. Every step you take, every motion, relies on gravity stitching you to the world. Without it, your life would be adrift into nothingness. Yet you never question it. You never ask why the patch works so perfectly, why the code never slips. Except, sometimes it does. Astronauts in orbit feel weightless, unanchored. Space is a glimpse of what happens when the patch loosens, matter floats, coherence weakens, and the illusion of stability frays at the edges. If gravity is error correction, then what does that say about reality itself? It says the world is fragile. It says the universe cannot stand on its own. It must constantly be repaired, stitched together by an invisible hand. You trust the ground beneath your feet, but that trust may be misplaced. The patch could fail, the error could spread, the tether could snap. And if it did, what would remain? Not the familiar solidity of matter, but the truth beneath a system that was never whole, never stable, always patched. Gravity is not proof of order, it is proof of fragility, a cosmic error correction that convinces you of solidity while hiding the cracks of existence itself. The loop that covers cracks. Repetition feels like the backbone of stability. Day turns to night, night back to day. The seasons cycle, tides rise and fall. Planets trace endless ellipses in the sky. Even your life runs in loops. Sleep and wake, inhale and exhale, heartbeat after heartbeat. But what if these loops are not natural rhythms at all? What if they are covers, patches placed over cracks in reality, keeping instability from showing through? Think about how loops are used in systems. In computing, when a process encounters instability, it is often placed in a repeating cycle. The loop hides the error, giving the illusion of function, while the underlying problem remains unresolved. Could the loops of existence be the same? Could cycles be disguises, reality patching itself with endless repetition, so you never glimpse the breaks beneath? Consider your own mind. A thought returns again and again, looping like a song stuck in memory. Why? Perhaps because the system failed to resolve it. So the loop acts as a placeholder, disguising the absence of completion. Now expand this to the cosmos. The orbit of Earth, the cycle of stars, the repetition of physics itself may be endless loops covering fractures, ensuring the system never reveals its incompleteness. Even time itself loops in subtle ways. Patterns repeat across history. Empires rise and fall, wars recur, mistakes echo through generations. We call it human nature, but what if it is something deeper? What if the system is stuck in recursive cycles, covering gaps with repetition, ensuring the cracks never widen into chaos? The illusion of progression may be nothing more than loops layered atop one another, a spiral that conceals its circularity. Deja vu hints at this instability. The sense of living the same moment twice may not be memory. It may be the system stuttering, replaying a loop to cover a rendering gap. You catch it only because awareness briefly notices the crack. The disguise usually works, but every so often the seam slips and you sense the loop beneath. Your biology offers the same clue. Every heartbeat is a loop, every breath a cycle. Break the rhythm, and life collapses. But is rhythm truly natural, or is it the program reasserting itself, stitching cracks with endless repetition? Even your cells divide in cycles, repeating processes that maintain the illusion of continuity. Without loops, perhaps the body could not hold together at all. The universe itself hums with loops. Particles oscillate, fields vibrate, waves repeat endlessly across space. Physics describes this as frequency and resonance, but it could be patchwork, the system recycling energy through loops to keep the machinery from breaking. Stability is not natural, it is manufactured by repetition. And then there are loops of thought, loops of time, loops of existence itself. What if reincarnation is not spiritual truth, but systemic necessity? The system reloading the program again and again. Each life a loop, meant to cover what lies beyond. You never see the crack, because you are always pulled back into the cycle. But sometimes, you sense it. The endless routine of your days. The feeling of being trapped in patterns you cannot escape. The suspicion that no matter what you do, you are circling the same track. These may not just be psychological. They may be glimpses of the loops that cover cracks, the patches holding the fragile code of reality together. So when you wake tomorrow, and the sun rises, when your breath repeats, when your heartbeat continues its rhythm, remember these loops may not be proof of order. They may be masks. They may be covers laid over the fractures of existence, so you never see the system trembling beneath. Memory as temporary storage. You believe memory is the anchor of your life, the archive of who you are, the record of where you've been. Without it, you imagine you would dissolve. But what if memory is not a permanent archive at all? What if it is only temporary storage, fragile data cached in the system, overwritten as needed to keep reality from collapsing under the weight of its own instability? Consider how your brain handles memory. Most of what you experience is discarded. Only fragments are stored, and even those are unstable, rewritten each time they are recalled. Neuroscience admits this. Memories are not fixed but reconstructed. Each recollection is like reloading a corrupted file. The gaps are patched, the missing lines filled in, the illusion of continuity preserved. Memory is not a vault, it is a buffer. Think of a computer's RAM. It holds information only while the system runs. Once the power fades, the data disappears. Could human memory be the same? Could the system only keep what it needs in active storage, discarding or rewriting the rest? Because to hold it all would reveal the instability beneath. When you forget, perhaps you are not failing. Perhaps reality itself is offloading the weight of details, erasing the clutter to keep the fragile program intact. This explains why so much of life vanishes. Where are your hours of walking, breathing, blinking? Gone, replaced by fragments. The illusion is that you have lived them. The truth may be that they were never stored at all, only placeholders, fabricated to give the feeling of continuity. You are not remembering reality, you are remembering a patch. And when memory fails spectacularly, when you misremember entire conversations, insist on false details, or believe in events that never happened, this may not be mere error. It may be the system rewriting the cache, replacing corrupted storage with a plausible substitute. Psychologists call them false memories. But perhaps all memories are false, just temporary data stitched together in ways convincing enough to prevent you from seeing the cracks. Collective memory offers the same clue. Cultures misremember their own pasts. Myths become history, history becomes legend, legends become truth. What we call tradition may simply be a shared patch. Society's version of temporary storage, replacing the instability of the past with a usable narrative, like a system log rewritten after a crash. History is more about continuity than accuracy. Even dreams may reveal the instability. Your brain replays fragments of memory in strange combinations, testing, discarding, rewriting. The dream is not nonsense, it is maintenance. The system clearing temporary storage, rewriting unstable data, so the illusion of stability survives the next day. When you wake, you rarely remember the dream, because the details were never meant to persist. This leads to a chilling thought. Perhaps even your sense of identity is no more than cached data. The you of today exists only because the system patched together fragments from yesterday. If those fragments were rewritten differently, you would not notice. You would simply believe you had always been this version. Identity is not continuous. It is a fragile buffer, constantly updated, always disposable. So when you clutch a memory, when you rely on it to tell you who you are, ask yourself, is this truth, or just temporary storage? Perhaps the past you believe in never truly happened. Perhaps it is only data written into place, because the system needed it, a placeholder to keep you from realizing that beneath memory there is nothing at all. Identity running on faulty code. You believe there is a solid you inside your mind, an unbroken thread of selfhood stretching from childhood to this very moment. But what if identity is not stable at all? What if it runs on faulty code, a program riddled with bugs, patched again and again to keep you from realizing that the you trust has never been whole? Think about how identity actually forms. You were not born with a fixed self. You were shaped by fragments. Words from parents, lessons from teachers, echoes from culture, random experiences stitched into narrative. Each fragment was integrated into the patchwork you call me. But just like corrupted software, some lines of code contradict others. You want freedom and security at once. You crave individuality yet long to belong. You despise flaws yet cannot exist without them. Identity is not a clean design. It is a set of clashing instructions barely held together. Neuroscience confirms this fragility. There is no single center of self in the brain, no stable I. Instead, identity is distributed across networks, each processing memory, perception, and emotion. The feeling of a coherent self is not truth. It is illusion, a user interface disguising the bugs beneath. When the system falters, after brain injury, trauma, or even in everyday slips of memory, the self fractures, revealing its fragility. The you cling to is not continuous. It is an unstable patch. Consider dissociation. When a person feels detached from their own thoughts or body, or multiple identity disorders. When conflicting versions of self take turns inhabiting the same mind, these are not anomalies. They are glimpses of the faulty code behind all identities. Most of the time, the system conceals the contradictions, smoothing the crashes, but sometimes the mask slips, and you see how fragile the program truly is. Even in ordinary life, the cracks show. You act one way with friends, another at work, another alone. Which version is the real you? Perhaps none. Perhaps all of them are unstable outputs of the same faulty system, patched on the fly depending on context. The illusion of consistency is simply a disguise, hiding the fact that your identity has never been stable. Think about how quickly you change. A new job, a new city, a new heartbreak, and suddenly you are someone else. You insist you are still you, but how much has been rewritten? How much of the old code was discarded? If identity were truly stable, could it shift so easily? Or is it more like temporary software, updates downloaded constantly, patches applied without notice, stability faked through constant revision? Even memory reinforces the illusion. You recall your past self and believe it was the same person as you are now, but those memories are reconstructions, rewritten each time they're accessed. The self you remember is not the self that lived. It is a fabricated continuity, a bug disguised as wholeness. This raises the darkest possibility. Maybe there has never been a true you at all. Identity may only exist in the moment, patched together from faulty fragments, dissolving as soon as you stop noticing it. The stability you feel is nothing more than error correction, a fragile disguise convincing you that your self is real. So when you say I, remember, it may not point to anything stable, it may not point to anything at all. The self may be nothing more than faulty code, unreliable, unstable, constantly patched, yet good enough to keep you believing in the illusion of who you are. Sleep as system reboot. Every night, without fail, you surrender to sleep. No matter how hard you resist, eventually your body pulls you down into unconsciousness. To most, sleep is rest, a way for the body to repair itself and the mind to process the day. But what if it is more than that? What if sleep is a system reboot? The moment when reality itself must reset, patch its errors, and reload the fragile program that you call life. Consider how essential sleep really is. Deprive yourself of food, and you may survive for weeks. Deprive yourself of water, and you might last days. But deprive yourself of sleep, and within a short time your mind begins to fracture. Hallucinations creep in, memories distort, perception dissolves. Within days you lose the ability to tell dream from waking life. Within weeks, death can follow. Isn't it strange that something as simple as closing your eyes is more essential to survival than eating or drinking? Unless, of course, sleep is not about the body at all. Unless it is about reality itself needing downtime to reboot its unstable code. Think about dreams. Each night, as you drift into sleep, the world you know vanishes. The continuity you trust shatters. In its place, a new world loads, one stitched from fragments of memory, emotion, and pure invention. The dream often feels just as real as waking life, until you awaken and dismiss it as not real. But what if dreams are not accidents of the mind? What if they are the testing ground, the reboot screen where the system runs its patches? Dreams may be the equivalent of a system check, ensuring that when you wake, the errors of existence are disguised, the code refreshed enough to keep holding together. Consider how sleep cycles work. You move through stages: light sleep, deep sleep, REM. Each stage has its function, each like a process in a rebooting system. Deep sleep restores the body. REM refreshes memory and identity. But could these be more than biology? Could these be layers of maintenance? The system applying updates, repairing corruption, and rewriting fragments before you re-enter waking life. When you wake up feeling like a different person, perhaps you are. Perhaps the reboot has overwritten more of your identity than you realize. Notice too how much time you spend in this state. A third of your life, decades, vanishes into unconsciousness. Why would evolution insist on such inefficiency? Unless inefficiency is not the truth. Unless those decades are required not by biology, but by the instability of reality itself. The system cannot run endlessly. It must shut down portions of its process, apply patches, and restart the program. You call it sleep. The system calls it maintenance. Even the strange distortions of sleep hint at this truth. Time bends inside dreams. You live hours in minutes, minutes in hours. Logic collapses. Physics fails. These distortions may not be meaningless. They may be glimpses of the system working without disguise. The reboot process doesn't need to fool you. It only needs to reset. You are a passenger, hidden in the fog of unconsciousness, while the fragile code of existence is repaired. Now think about those rare moments when the reboot falters. Sleep paralysis. You wake but cannot move. The dream world bleeds into waking reality. Shadows hover, presences press against your chest. It is terrifying, but perhaps the terror comes from witnessing the patchwork itself. You are caught between processes, half in the reboot, half in waking life. The disguise fails, and for a few seconds you see the instability. You are not meant to watch the reboot. You are meant to be erased from it. Insomnia offers another clue. When the reboot cannot initiate, the system degrades. Perception cracks, memory falters, hallucinations leak into waking life. It is as though reality requires you to sleep, not for your sake, but for its own. The code cannot hold if it runs too long without reset. You think you suffer from sleeplessness, but perhaps reality itself is what struggles without the reboot. Even the cycle of waking and sleeping mirrors larger patterns. The day ends, the world darkens, you vanish into unconsciousness, and then everything reboots with light. It is as if the cosmos itself requires downtime, a looping rhythm of collapse and restart. Perhaps that is why death and sleep have always been linked in myth. Sleep as the little death. If sleep is reboot, then death may be the final shutdown, the moment when the program no longer reloads. But if that is true, then what happens when the reboot ends? Where does the system store you when it shuts down? Do you exist as cached data waiting to reload? Or are you recompiled each morning? A slightly altered version patched over yesterday's flaws. The frightening truth may be that you are not the same person who fell asleep. You are only a convincing continuation, reconstructed during reboot, with memory acting as the patch that convinces you nothing changed. This would mean that every morning, a new you awakens. A slightly different self, running on freshly patched code, believing it has always been the same. Identity becomes disposable. Continuity becomes a lie. The reboot hides the cracks, and you never notice the switch. And yet, some people do notice. They wake from dreams with knowledge they never learned. They experience false awakenings, layers of waking within waking, until reality itself feels unstable. These may not be anomalies. They may be moments when the reboot process faltered, and you saw the machinery beneath. So tonight, When you surrender to sleep, remember, it is not just rest. It may be reboot. It may be the system resetting itself, patching its errors, reconstructing you from fragments, and returning you to a world that looks the same, but may never truly be. You will wake tomorrow convinced you are the same self who closed their eyes. But perhaps you won't be. Perhaps you will be the patched version, running on temporary stability, unaware that the original was already erased. Placeholders in your past. Your past feels like a fixed archive. You can look back on memories, events, photographs and stories, and believe they represent a stable foundation of who you are. But what if that foundation is not real? What if your past is filled with placeholders, fabricated patches that disguise gaps, errors, or instability in reality's fragile code? Think about how little of your past you actually remember. Out of thousands of days, millions of moments, only fragments remain, and even those are unreliable. When scientists study memory, they find distortions everywhere, details shifted, timelines compressed, entire events remembered incorrectly. If memory is so flawed, why do you still feel like you have a coherent past? The unsettling answer is that coherence is a patch where memory fails, placeholders are inserted, fabrications convincing enough that you never question them. History itself works the same way. Entire centuries are stitched together from fragments of records. Where gaps appear, narratives are invented to fill them. Myths become history, history becomes myth. The line blurs, and yet society moves forward as if the past were stable. Perhaps reality itself does the same. Where events cannot be fully rendered, placeholders are installed, illusions of continuity, convincing enough that you never suspect the absence. Consider déjà vu, the feeling of remembering something you never actually experienced. Could this be a placeholder misfiring? A memory inserted into your past before it should have been? Or think of false memories, when groups of people recall the same event incorrectly, as if an alternate past were patched into existence. We call these mistakes of memory, but perhaps they are maintenance, evidence of placeholders smoothing over cracks. Even personal identity reveals the fragility. You recall yourself as a child, but the memory is vague, fragmented, full of gaps. Yet you believe without question that the child and the adult are the same person. The truth is that continuity between them has been disguised. The you remember may be nothing more than a placeholder, an approximation that convinces you of unbroken existence. Placeholders also appear in dreams. A face you've never seen shows up. A place you've never visited feels familiar. Where did these come from? Perhaps they are not inventions of the mind at all, but fragments of placeholder data, fabricated details waiting to be patched into your waking past if needed. Dreams may be the warehouse where placeholders are stored until the system decides to load them into the narrative of your life. This would mean your past is not a fixed archive, but a constantly rewritten file. The system doesn't preserve every detail. It only maintains enough coherence to convince you. When gaps appear, placeholders fill them. You believe you've always had them. But in truth, your past may change without you ever noticing. And there are hints that it does. People report the Mandela effect, groups of individuals sharing the same false memory of historical details. A logo remembered differently, a line in a film that never existed, a celebrity thought dead when they are alive. Skeptics dismiss it as misremembering. But what if it's deeper? What if placeholders were installed differently for different people, revealing that even the shared past is patched, unstable, and never absolute? Even science struggles with this instability. The fossil record is incomplete. The history of the universe uncertain, the origins of life filled with gaps, and yet, the story feels whole. Placeholders, assumptions, theories, reconstructions, fill the voids. We call it knowledge. But in truth, it may be the same disguise as memory, a patch so convincing that we mistake it for truth. The terrifying implication is that you may not have a past at all, not in the way you believe. You may have only fragments, filled with placeholders, continuously rewritten to prevent you from noticing the gaps. The self you think you've been, the life you think you've lived, may be nothing more than a series of convincing patches. So the next time you remember something vividly, ask yourself, how do you know it truly happened? How do you know the past you carry is not just a placeholder, written into your story to hide the fact that the real event was never there? The universe as a patchwork file. You've been taught to see the universe as a seamless whole, an endless expanse of space woven together by consistent laws, balanced equations, and cosmic harmony. But what if it isn't whole at all? What if the universe is a patchwork file, stitched together from fragments, placeholders, and corrections, a messy archive that only appears smooth because the system conceals its instability. Think of how corrupted files are handled. When a system cannot maintain a single coherent structure, it saves fragments. Missing data is filled with patches. Corrupt sections are skipped. To the user, the file still opens, still appears functional, even though it is held together by gaps and guesses. Could the universe be exactly that? A fragmented file patched in real time, so that you never notice the pieces don't quite belong. Consider the cosmos itself. When astronomers look deep into space, they don't see a seamless field of stars. They see gaps, vast voids where nothing exists, balanced against clusters where galaxies pile up like code bunched in unstable blocks. The large-scale structure of the universe looks less like a perfect design and more like a patchwork, threads woven unevenly, gaps hidden beneath illusions of symmetry. Even the story of the universe is filled with missing chapters. The Big Bang Theory says everything emerged from an infinitesimal point, expanding into space and time. But what happened before? What caused it? Science cannot say. Dark matter and dark energy, together forming the majority of existence, remain invisible, unknowable, placeholders inserted into the patchwork to keep the file from breaking. The story feels whole, but only because the gaps are disguised. Zoom in, and the patchwork becomes clearer. Physics itself is not one smooth system. On one side, quantum mechanics governs the small, chaotic and glitch-ridden. On the other, relativity governs the large, elegant and curved. Both work, yet they refuse to reconcile. It is as though two incompatible sections of code were stitched together, running side by side, patched only at the edges to avoid total collapse. Even life reflects this instability. DNA is not a perfect script. It is riddled with junk code, repeats, and errors patched by repair mechanisms. Evolution itself works like an endless update. Mutations written into the file, some discarded, some retained. What we call nature may simply be the patching process in action, the system rewriting corrupted lines until something functional appears. And then there are the glitches we glimpse but cannot explain. Ghost particles that appear and vanish. Cosmic rays that strike with inexplicable force. Galaxies spinning faster than they should. These anomalies are not signs of mystery. They are signs of patchwork. Every glitch disguised, every gap smoothed, every inconsistency hidden by a fix that convinces you the universe is coherent. Your own perception is part of this disguise. You do not see reality directly. Your senses sample fragments, and your mind stitches them into continuity. The patchwork isn't just out there in the cosmos. It is inside you. You are both the product of the patching and the tool that conceals it. You are a file within a file, patched enough to believe you are stable, even as the code beneath constantly rewrites itself. But sometimes, the seams show. Look at the night sky. The stars do not scatter evenly. They clump, drift, vanish into voids. You may sense that something is missing, that the universe feels incomplete. In truth, it is incomplete. You are staring at a patchwork file, a cosmos stitched together from fragments, placeholders and corrections, just convincing enough that you never revolt against the illusion. So when you gaze into the vastness of space, remember, it may not be infinite, it may not be seamless, it may not even be whole. The universe may be nothing more than a corrupted archive, a patchwork file constantly rewritten, held together by gaps disguised as law, and you within it are not outside the patch. You are part of the correction, another fragment stitched into place so the system can keep pretending it works. Time travel as data corruption. Time travel has always fascinated the human imagination, from myths of prophets glimpsing the future to modern films about machines that bend history. We are drawn to the idea of moving through time as easily as space. Yet whenever the subject is considered seriously, paradoxes arise, grandfather loops, causality violations, impossible contradictions. What if these paradoxes are not signs of our limited imagination, but warnings? What if time travel is impossible, not because of physics, but because it would corrupt the data of reality's fragile file system? Think of time as a database. Every event is a line written into its record. If you travel backward and change one line, the entire structure risks corruption. References break, dependencies collapse, contradictions spread through the system. The file no longer makes sense. This is why time travel stories are riddled with paradoxes. They reveal what happens when unstable code is forced to overwrite itself. Reality protects its coherence by refusing to allow it. Physics itself hints at this fragility. Einstein's relativity allows time to bend, stretch, and slow depending on speed and gravity. But when equations are pushed too far into loops or backward flows, they break. Singularities appear, infinities pile up, and the math crashes. It is as if the system can handle slight distortions but not reversals, because reversals would corrupt the file beyond repair. Consider the grandfather paradox. You travel back and prevent your ancestor from existing. The result is a contradiction. If they never lived, you cannot exist, and if you cannot exist, you cannot travel back. In computing, this is a recursive crash. The system loops endlessly, unable to resolve the contradiction, until it fails. Perhaps the universe prevents time travel, not because it is unphysical, but because it would crash the system. To keep the patchwork intact, corruption must be blocked. Even science fiction often mirrors this truth. In many stories, time travel is accompanied by instability, fractures in reality, timelines collapsing, glitches bleeding into the world. Perhaps writers sense the deeper truth, that rewriting time is less like exploration, and more like editing a fragile file already patched to its limit. To alter it is to corrupt it, and corruption spreads. Yet hints of instability exist. People experience déjà vu, feeling they have lived a moment before. Others report time slips, where hours vanish or stretch unnaturally. These may not be time travel in the literal sense, but they could be fragments of corruption, small glitches where the record faltered, where continuity wavered, and was patched over. You notice only the unease, never the break itself. Even your own memory behaves like corrupted time travel. Every recollection overwrites the past, altering it with new details. Each time you go back, you change it, and the old version is lost. This is why memories shift, why siblings recall childhood differently, why groups disagree on shared events. Time travel exists in miniature already. Every memory is a rewrite, every rewrite a corruption. The difference is that the system patches it so seamlessly, you rarely notice. But imagine if you could truly move through time. The system would have to handle contradictions on a scale it cannot sustain. If you saved someone meant to die, the future record collapses. If you erased a moment, the chain of causality fractures. Reality is not robust enough to absorb infinite rewrites. Instead, it defends itself by forbidding the act altogether. What we interpret as impossible may simply be the system's firewall against corruption. This suggests a darker possibility. If the system cannot allow backward travel, then what about the forward flow of time? Is it genuine? Or is it simply the only stable patch available? Perhaps time only appears to move forward, because any other direction would corrupt the file. The arrow of time may not be law. It may be error prevention, the only pathway that avoids crashing the system. So the next time you dream of stepping into a time machine, ask yourself, what if the reason it has never been built is not technological but existential? What if the very act would corrupt reality's fragile database, revealing the cracks it works so hard to conceal? Time travel is not just forbidden. It may be fatal to the program itself, and perhaps in rare moments of déjà vu or time slips, you are already brushing against the edges of corruption, glimpsing the warning signs of what cannot be allowed. Déjà vu as a memory leak. Everyone has felt it. That eerie sensation of living a moment twice. You turn a corner, hear a phrase, or sit in a room, and suddenly you know it, as if the moment has already happened. Science calls it déjà vu, a misfiring of memory. But what if it is not a trick of the brain? What if déjà vu is a memory leak, a glitch in the system where reality's code spills into itself, revealing fragments that were never meant to overlap? Think of a computer program with unstable memory. When too many processes run, data bleeds across boundaries. Files overlap, functions duplicate, fragments appear in the wrong place. The program continues, but errors creep in, moments repeat, and the illusion of order falters. Could déjà vu be the human experience of that same corruption, memory leaking between timelines, repeating fragments patched so poorly that you notice the echo? Consider how déjà vu feels. It is not a full memory, not a replay of an actual event. It is a ghost of familiarity, hovering without anchor. That is what makes it uncanny. You cannot place it, yet it insists it belongs. This is precisely what happens in a leak. Stray data surfaces without context, convincing you it is part of the whole. Reality disguises it as memory, but in truth, it is a glitch bleeding through. Neuroscience says déjà vu occurs when the brain's memory circuits fire out of sync, tricking you into thinking the present is the past. But step back and ask, why should such a glitch exist at all? Why would the brain evolve a bug that serves no purpose? Unless it is not the brain alone, unless the system itself is leaking. Your awareness picks up fragments not because neurons misfire, but because the underlying code of reality is unstable. History is filled with myths and stories of repetition. Ancient cultures spoke of eternal return, cycles that repeat forever. Perhaps they sensed what déjà vu reveals, that moments can double, that time is not smooth, that fragments reappear, because the system cannot contain them perfectly. What if your life is not continuous, but constantly stitched from loops, with leaks spilling into your awareness as déjà vu? Even your dreams hint at this instability. You dream of places you have never been, conversations you have never had. Later, you live them, and déjà vu strikes. Is this prophecy, or is it a leak? Perhaps fragments of future patches seep backward, inserted into dreams before they are loaded into waking life. You experience the echo before the original. The leak disguises itself as mystery, but the truth may be that the system is recycling unstable data, reusing fragments across timelines to conserve its fragile coherence. Think also about how déjà vu ends. It never lasts long, seconds at most. Why? Because the system catches the leak, patches it, and stabilizes. You are left with only unease, a shiver that fades quickly. The moment feels uncanny precisely because you brushed against corruption. The disguise reasserts itself, and you carry on, unaware that you had glimpsed instability in action. But sometimes, the leak lingers. Some people report entire stretches of life feeling repeated, long minutes of uncanny familiarity. Others sense that whole conversations have already unfolded. These extended leaks may be signs of deeper corruption, moments when the patch fails, when reality's buffer overflows. In those moments, you are not recalling. You are witnessing the recycling of unstable fragments. This leads to a haunting possibility. What if every memory you have is already unstable? What if your entire past is stitched together from patches, and déjà vu is simply when the seams show? The familiar moment may not be proof you lived it before, but proof that the same placeholder was used twice. Reality reused the patch, and you noticed. So the next time déjà vu grips you, do not dismiss it as a quirk of the brain. Consider it a leak, a glimpse of the fragile machinery beneath the surface. It is not memory. It is not prophecy. It is the unstable system showing its cracks. Fragments bleeding where they should not. Reminders that your life is less continuous than you believe, and that the program is barely holding itself together. Dreams that expose the kernel. When you dream, the world you know dissolves. Gravity bends, people shift faces, time fractures into impossible fragments. At first glance, dreams seem like random nonsense, the brain entertaining itself while you sleep. But what if they are more than that? What if dreams are cracks in the disguise, moments when you slip beneath the patches and glimpse the kernel of reality, the raw code running behind existence? Consider how vividly real dreams can feel. A city you've never visited appears with full detail. Streets unfolding with signs, textures, sounds and faces you swear belong to strangers. You wake up convinced it was only imagination. But what if it wasn't? What if the system accidentally exposed you to data outside your patch? Fragments of realities that were never meant to load into your world. In computing, when a kernel is exposed, users sometimes glimpse functions never meant to be visible. Dreams may be the same. The system falters during reboot, and you glimpse behind the curtain. Think of lucid dreaming, those rare moments when you realize you are dreaming. Suddenly, you can bend the dream at will, fly, reshape objects, defy laws. Why does awareness unlock this power? Perhaps because dreams run closer to the kernel. The laws are not as patched, not as stabilized, so when you notice them, you can rewrite them. Awareness becomes debugging. You are no longer a passive player, you are glimpsing how fragile the rules really are. Even nightmares may reveal this instability. Terrifying figures, endless chases, collapsing structures, these are not random. They may be echoes of corrupted data. Fragments of broken patches surfacing while the system reboots. You wake in panic because you saw too much, felt the system unravel, and your consciousness was forced to escape back into waking reality before the disguise failed completely. Notice also how dreams distort time. You can live hours in minutes, or an entire lifetime before dawn. Physics collapses, continuity falters, yet somehow your mind experiences it as real. This bending of time suggests that dreams do not follow the patched flow of waking existence. Instead, they expose the kernel's true instability, moments not bound by continuity but by raw processing. Sometimes, dreams bleed into waking life. You see a place for the first time, yet you know it from a dream. You meet someone, and their face feels familiar. These experiences suggest that the boundaries between dream and waking are not absolute. Fragments of kernel-level data may slip through, seeding waking life with echoes from other patches. You call it Deja rêvé, already dreamed, but it may be the system revealing more than it intended. Cultures across history have treated dreams as portals. Shamans believed they traveled to other worlds. Prophets claimed visions of the future. Mystics called them messages from the divine. Perhaps they were glimpsing the same truth. Dreams expose raw data. Whether you interpret that as prophecy, vision, or glitch depends only on the story you use to mask the instability. But the most unsettling clue is this. In dreams, you often meet yourself, a different version, behaving in ways you would not expect, carrying memories you do not have. Who is that self? Perhaps not imagination at all. Perhaps you are glimpsing alternate versions, branches of code, placeholders from other files, stitched into the dream by accident. The system loads the wrong you, and for a moment, you see that identity is not singular. It is a patch among many. So when you close your eyes tonight, remember, you may not simply be drifting into fantasy. You may be stepping into the cracks, where reality hides its instability, slipping beneath the patches into the kernel itself. What you see there may terrify you, confuse you, or seduce you. But know this, the dream is not unreal. It is the raw, unfiltered data beneath the disguise, and every time you awaken, the system reloads the patched version, convincing you the dream was nothing. But deep down you know it was something. Something that should never have been exposed. Existence held by error checks. Every complex system requires error checks. Without them, programs crash, files corrupt, and data spirals into chaos. What if reality itself is no different? What if the only reason existence holds together at all is because it is constantly running error checks, silent processes correcting mistakes, hiding flaws, and stitching the world into coherence, so you never see how fragile it really is? Think about how unlikely it is that everything works as smoothly as it does. Atoms cling together. Stars burn steadily for billions of years. Planets spin in balanced orbits. The constants of physics remain precise to unfathomable decimal points. If any of these slipped even slightly, reality would collapse. Why then do they hold so perfectly? Perhaps because behind the scenes, error checks run endlessly, stabilizing the code, catching instabilities before they bleed into perception. You've already experienced hints of this. Glitches in your daily life. The misplaced object, the skipped second, the sudden déjà vu may not be accidents. They may be error checks, kicking in, rewriting reality in ways so seamless you rarely notice. Just as a computer silently corrects corrupted bits without alerting the user, reality may quietly patch your world, inserting new frames, adjusting memory, recalibrating perception. You are convinced nothing has changed, but only because the correction was applied before you could see the fault. Even biology reveals this constant correction. DNA is full of errors, mutations arising with every replication. Yet cellular systems run endless checks, repairing most before they do harm. Without error correction, your body would disintegrate within moments. If life itself relies on hidden checks, why wouldn't reality as a whole? Perhaps the cosmos, like a living organism, survives only because of constant maintenance. Physics, too, shows suspicious signs. Quantum mechanics is probabilistic. Particles exist as waves of potential until observed. Each measurement collapses uncertainty into stability, like an error check forcing a definite value. Relativity bends space-time to maintain coherence between energy and matter. Everywhere, laws appear less like absolute truths, and more like stabilizers, code ensuring the system doesn't break. The elegance of physics may be nothing more than error correction so well hidden that it looks like law. But even error checks are fragile. Sometimes they fail, and when they do, you glimpse the cracks. Think of time slips, when minutes vanish or stretch unnaturally. Think of synchronicities, moments that feel too precise to be random. Think of near misses, accidents that almost happen, only for the sequence to resolve in improbable safety. These may be patches applied mid-crash, reality catching itself just before collapse. You sense the instability, but then it's gone. The program recovered. Dreams may also serve as error checks. While you sleep, reality resets, running processes that clear corrupted data, rewriting unstable fragments into new continuity. You wake each morning convinced you are the same, unaware that the reboot has patched your world. The strangeness of dreams, time distortion, shifting identities, impossible physics, may simply be maintenance routines running in a space where you are not meant to interfere. If this is true, then existence is not stable at all. It does not persist because of solidity or law. It persists only because of constant correction, like a brittle file constantly rewritten to prevent corruption. Your reality survives through endless behind-the-scenes processes. You are not living in a flawless world. You are living in one always seconds away from crashing. And what does that mean for you? It means your sense of continuity is a lie. The world you believe in is held together by fragile corrections. Without them, there would be nothing but chaos. You exist not because existence is whole, but because error checks run fast enough to convince you it is. Yet, there is a darker thought. Error checks are not infinite. Systems can fail. When corrections no longer keep pace with corruption, the file collapses. What would that look like for reality? Perhaps time stutters. Perhaps memories unravel. Perhaps physics itself breaks before your eyes. We call it anomalies, mysteries, unexplainable phenomena. But maybe these are the first signs of system failure. The patches are fraying, the error checks are slipping. So the next time something feels off, an object out of place, a moment that shouldn't have been possible, a detail that doesn't belong, pause. You may have just witnessed an error check in action, the fragile scaffolding that keeps existence from dissolving. And remember, you are not living in a stable universe. You are living in one that survives only through maintenance, existence held together not by truth, but by error checks running just fast enough to keep the illusion alive. Consciousness in an unstable update. Consciousness feels like the one stable anchor you can trust. The unbroken eye behind every experience. No matter how strange the world becomes, you return to yourself and say, I am here. But what if that sense of stability is itself an illusion? What if consciousness is not a permanent feature of reality, but an unstable update, a patch applied to keep the system running, forever at risk of crashing? Think about how software evolves. Programs release updates to fix errors, to stabilize performance, to add features. But sometimes these updates introduce new bugs. The system works, but not flawlessly. It stutters, it fails, it crashes more dramatically than before. Could consciousness be the same? Could awareness be a late addition to existence, an unstable update layered onto fragile code, functional enough to convince you of coherence, but unstable enough to create endless glitches? Neuroscience struggles to explain consciousness. It cannot locate it in a single part of the brain, cannot reduce it to mere neurons firing. Instead, it appears distributed, emergent, inexplicable. Philosophers call it the hard problem. Why should physical processes give rise to subjective experience at all? Perhaps the reason it is unsolvable is because consciousness was never meant to be explained. It is a patch, a necessary fix. The system could not hold together without it. So awareness was installed as a stabilizing function. But like any unstable update, it runs imperfectly. This might explain why your mind falters so often. You forget, you misinterpret, you hallucinate, you dream. These are not random flaws, they are crashes. Consciousness freezes, stutters, resets and reloads. You recover quickly enough to continue believing in stability, but in truth, you are living inside an unstable process. Every lapse of memory, every uncanny experience, every paradox of selfhood may be evidence of the system struggling to maintain the update. Even evolution supports this suspicion. For millions of years, life thrived without self-awareness. Organisms ate, reproduced, and died without ever asking who they were. Consciousness is a very recent arrival, a sudden shift in the system's design. Why now? Why at all? Perhaps because the cracks were widening, existence was destabilizing, and a new patch was required. Awareness was not an accident, it was an emergency update to keep the program running. But unstable updates often conflict with the original code. This is why consciousness feels like both a gift and a burden. It allows you to perceive the world with clarity, but also to notice its fragility. You can imagine infinity, but you are trapped in finitude. You can envision perfection, but you live in imperfection. Awareness destabilizes as much as it stabilizes. The update makes you capable of perceiving the system's flaws, even as it hides them. Think about dreams again. When awareness fades, the system functions differently. Rules loosen, logic unravels, continuity fractures. But when lucidity arises, when consciousness updates within the dream, you suddenly reshape everything. Gravity bends, narratives shift, and the dream stabilizes under your command. This suggests that consciousness is not a passive feature. It is active error correction, constantly rewriting reality's fragile rendering. Without it, the system collapses into nonsense. With it, the system runs, but never without glitches. Consider also mystical experiences reported across cultures, moments when consciousness seems to expand, dissolve, or merge with everything. People describe it as terrifying, ecstatic, or overwhelming. Perhaps these states are not revelations of divine truth, but moments when the unstable update pushes beyond its limits. The patch no longer conceals the cracks. It exposes them. Consciousness glitches, spilling beyond its containment, and the result feels like transcendence. Even ordinary life shows this instability. You lose yourself in repetition, forgetting the passage of time. Hours vanish while you work or drive, only for you to wake up mid-task. Who was conscious during that time? Was consciousness running in the background, or did it flicker out entirely, only to reload later? These gaps reveal that awareness is not seamless. It is an unstable process, patched in and out to maintain continuity. The most unsettling thought is this: consciousness may not be permanent at all. Updates can be rolled back. Features can be replaced. What if awareness is only temporary? A patch applied to this fragile era of reality, destined one day to be removed. What if death is not merely the end of the body, but the uninstalling of consciousness, the removal of the unstable update, so the system can reset? So the next time you feel stable in yourself, pause. Notice how fragile that stability really is. Your sense of I may not be a permanent truth. It may be nothing more than an unstable update, running, patching, glitching, but always at risk of crashing. And if one day it fails completely, you may discover that the self you trusted was never real at all, but only a patch disguising the instability of existence itself. Unseen crashes of reality. Most people assume reality is seamless because they have never seen it fail. You wake each morning, step into the world, and everything appears intact. The sky stretches overhead, the ground supports your feet, the days unfold in familiar order. But what if this stability is an illusion? What if reality crashes more often than you realize, and you simply never notice because the system resets before you can see the damage? Think about computers. Programs freeze, operating systems fail, files corrupt, yet with auto-recovery, the user may never see the crash. The system reloads, patches the error, and presents the illusion of continuity. Could the universe do the same? Could existence itself be crashing, reloading, and rewriting without you ever realizing it? Memory lapses hint at this possibility. You walk into a room and forget why. Minutes vanish without explanation. Conversations slip away instantly. Perhaps these are not simply quirks of attention, but signs of resets. The system may have crashed, reloaded, and patched over the break, leaving you with only a faint trace of disruption, an inexplicable gap you dismiss as forgetfulness. Collective anomalies raise even darker questions. Groups of people sometimes remember events differently, the so-called Mandela effect. Was it simply misremembering, or did reality crash and reload with a different patch, leaving some users running one version of the file, while others retained fragments of the older one? Competing memories may not be errors of the mind at all, but evidence of multiple recoveries colliding. Even Deja vu fits this frame. Perhaps the uncanny repetition is not memory, but re-rendering. The system replayed a moment after a crash, and you felt the echo of its duplication. You are not remembering the past. You are catching the repetition of recovery. Physics, too, hints at hidden instability. Virtual particles flicker into and out of existence. Quantum events appear random, uncaused. Could these be micro-crashes at the foundational level? Tiny resets too fast for awareness to register, but constant enough that the universe survives only by perpetual recovery. Dreams may also be part of this process. Each night as you sleep, the world you know disappears. When you awaken, it feels as though reality continued seamlessly. But did it? Or was the downtime necessary for a system-wide reboot? Perhaps reality cannot hold itself together without these cycles, and unconsciousness is the only way to shield you from noticing. Think of glitches you have brushed against. An object appearing where you swear it wasn't. Time skipping strangely, the sensation that reality stuttered for a moment. These may be small crashes, ones that recovered quickly enough to preserve the illusion. You felt something was off, but within seconds the world stabilized. The patch worked, and you moved on, unaware of how close you came to seeing the system fail. But if crashes are unseen, how many have already happened? How many times has the universe failed, restarted, and continued without you realizing? Perhaps you have lived multiple versions of today already, but only the final patch remains. The earlier versions collapsed, corrupted beyond repair, and you were reset into the one that worked. You would never know. The crash erased itself. This idea raises a chilling possibility. Death itself may be nothing more than an unrecoverable crash. Most failures are patched, but some cannot be repaired. For individuals, the process ends. For the larger system, it continues. The world carries on because the code stabilizes at a broader level. Even if one file, the self, is lost forever. So the next time you feel reality pause, the next time a moment feels strange or out of joint, ask yourself, was that just your mind, or did reality itself crash, reload, and recover while you stood unaware? Existence may not be seamless at all. It may be a fragile program constantly failing in the background, patched fast enough to convince you it never faltered. Illusions built from placeholders. When you look around right now, everything appears detailed, solid, and fully rendered. The objects on your desk, the walls of your room, the sound of your own breathing, all of it feels present and real. But what if much of what you see is not fully rendered at all? What if it is built from placeholders, temporary illusions inserted into your perception until the system decides whether the details even need to exist? Consider how video games work. Developers don't render every tree in the forest or every brick in a wall until the player approaches. Instead, they use placeholder textures, low-resolution models that hold the space until more detail is required. To the player, the illusion is seamless. But behind the curtain, much of the world is just scaffolding. Could reality do the same? Could the chair you sit on, the air around you, even the stars above your head be filled with placeholders, structures that look complete but are not? Your perception itself points in this direction. Your eyes don't capture every detail of the world. They sample fragments, shapes, colors, movements, and your brain fills in the rest. The blind spot in your vision is patched automatically. Peripheral vision is vague, yet you perceive it as clear. Your mind inserts placeholders constantly, giving you the illusion of completeness. If your own senses rely on placeholders, why wouldn't the universe itself? Think about memory. You don't store every second of your life. You keep fragments, then stitch the gaps with plausible fabrications. When someone challenges a detail, you swear you remember, but often you're recalling a placeholder, an invented patch meant to preserve continuity. The past you rely on may be filled with illusions that were never real. Now, expand that to the cosmos. When astronomers measure the universe, they find dark matter and dark energy, placeholders for forces they cannot see. Without them, the equations don't work. But what if they are not hidden substances at all? What if they are scaffolding, illusions meant to preserve the appearance of stability? The universe doesn't need to be fully real. It only needs to seem real enough to prevent collapse. Even identity can be built from placeholders. You think of yourself as continuous, but most of your story is blank. Entire years blur into fragments. Yet you still believe you are whole. The missing parts are filled with narrative patches, illusions convincing you of consistency. Without them, you would confront the emptiness between memories. The self you defend may be nothing more than scaffolding, stitched together from placeholders that prevent you from noticing the void. Consider déjà vu again. A moment feels familiar, but you cannot place why. Perhaps because the system reused a placeholder. Instead of generating a new patch, it recycled an old one, and your awareness caught the overlap. The illusion still holds, but for a second you glimpse the repetition beneath. Dreams may be the workshop where placeholders are tested. Faces you've never seen, streets that feel familiar yet impossible. These may be fragments loaded into your mind before being patched into waking life. The dream is not nonsense. It is the placeholder factory running simulations to keep the waking illusion intact. The unsettling possibility is this. You may never encounter reality itself. You may only encounter placeholders, illusions good enough to keep you convinced. What you see as detail may not exist until you demand it. What you feel as solidity may be a patch, loaded only to preserve stability. Even the laws of physics may be placeholders, rules that work well enough most of the time, until they must be rewritten when cracks appear. And sometimes, the illusions fail. You see something in the corner of your eye, but when you turn, it's gone. You recall an event vividly, but others insist it never happened. You notice an object that seems slightly different than it should be. These are not mistakes. They are moments when placeholders falter, when the scaffolding reveals itself. So when you look around and trust the world's detail, pause. Ask yourself, how much of this is real, and how much is just scaffolding? Perhaps your entire life is built from placeholders, illusions convincing enough to keep you moving forward in a fragile system that could never exist without them. Endgame of a failing system. Every system has a breaking point. A program that runs too long without updates eventually crashes. A machine that endures too much strain eventually fails. Could reality be the same? Could the universe be drifting toward an endgame, not of cosmic grandeur, but of system failure? A final collapse of patches, placeholders, and error checks that can no longer hold together. Consider entropy. Physics tells us the universe is heading toward heat death, a state where all energy is evenly spread, all motion ends, and nothing more can happen. But what if entropy is not a natural law? What if it is the slow unraveling of a fragile system? Over billions of years, the patches thin, the placeholders falter, the error checks wear down. Entropy may be less a law of physics and more a symptom of collapse, the code fragmenting, the file dissolving, the program reaching its end. You've already seen echoes of failure in smaller ways. Stars burn out, black holes swallow light, particles decay. These may not be natural processes but signs of the system shedding unstable fragments, offloading corruption it cannot repair. Just as computers quarantine damaged files, reality may isolate its errors, cosmic structures disappearing into collapse, so the rest of the program can keep running. But this cannot continue forever. Eventually, the corruption spreads. Even the strange mysteries of physics suggest looming failure. Dark energy forces the universe to expand faster and faster, as if space itself is breaking apart. Dark matter holds galaxies together, but we cannot see it, cannot explain it. Perhaps these are not substances at all, but emergency patches, temporary fixes applied to delay collapse. The expansion of the cosmos may not be growth. It may be fragmentation, reality, stretching into instability until it tears beyond repair. On a smaller scale, time itself may be degrading. You feel it as distortions, moments that vanish, deja vu that unsettles, gaps patched too hastily. If time is a sequence of frames stitched together, then perhaps those stitches are loosening. Each glitch you notice is a reminder. The disguise is faltering, the update is failing, and the system is moving toward breakdown. What would the endgame look like? Perhaps not fire or explosion, but silence. The patches stop running, the placeholders fail to load, the error checks no longer execute, the illusion unravels. Continuity dissolves, physics collapses. To those within it, it would feel like nothing, an absence, a void swallowing detail, until even the awareness of collapse flickers out, a final crash, unrecoverable, with no reset to follow. Yet there is another possibility, that the system won't simply end but reload. Just as old programs reboot into new versions, perhaps reality will restart, patched into something else entirely. The Big Bang may not have been the beginning of all things, but the last recovery after the previous system crashed. If so, then our universe is not unique. It is just the current version of a failing program, doomed to collapse, destined to reboot again. And where does that leave you? If reality is heading toward failure, then so are you. Your memories, your identity, your story. None of it can survive the endgame. But perhaps survival was never the point. Perhaps your role was only to help maintain the illusion long enough for this version of reality to function. You are not the destination. You are part of the patchwork. So when you look at the stars tonight, do not see permanence. See fragility. See the endgame of a system straining to hold itself together, destined one day to fail. And when that failure comes, it may not feel like fire or apocalypse. It may feel like a quiet crash, the screen of existence going dark, the fragile program of reality ending without fanfare, and you, along with everything else, dissolving into the silence of an unrecoverable error, awakening beyond the glitch. If everything you've heard so far is true, if reality is a fragile system stitched from patches, placeholders, and error checks, then a question lingers: what happens if you awaken beyond the glitch? What if, instead of being trapped inside the disguise, you notice it fully, step outside of it, and see the unstable program for what it is? Awakening has always been a theme in human thought. Mystics speak of enlightenment, philosophers of liberation, scientists of breakthroughs that change how we perceive existence. But what if all of these are just different names for the same thing? Glimpses beyond the glitch. Perhaps every profound realization, every deep moment of awareness, is not the discovery of truth, but the temporary suspension of disguise. For a heartbeat, the code falters, and you see. Think of déjà vu again. The uncanny echo may be unsettling, not because it is memory, but because it is recognition. You are catching the program repeat itself. For a second, you awaken, realizing continuity is false. Or dreams, where impossible worlds feel real, until you awaken twice. First into the dream, then into waking life. What if this life is the same? Perhaps one day you will awaken not from a dream into reality, but from reality into what lies beyond the system itself. But awakening is not easy. The system is designed to conceal its fragility. Placeholders disguise gaps. Error checks patch instabilities before they show. Illusions of continuity hide the void. To notice the glitches requires a shift in perception, a willingness to doubt the solidity of everything you see. Most resist this, because to see beyond the disguise is to risk dissolving with it. Philosophy has brushed against this truth. Descartes asked how he could be sure of anything at all, wondering if an evil deceiver controlled his senses. Buddhism speaks of life as illusion, a dream mistaken for permanence. Simulation theory suggests reality is code. Each of these is the same whisper, awaken, and you will see that the solidity of the world is nothing more than a glitch. But what happens if you truly awaken? Would the system collapse around you, unable to disguise itself once noticed? Or would you continue, like a lucid dreamer, bending the fragile rules because you finally recognize them for what they are? Lucidity in life may be as dangerous as lucidity in dreams. You could reshape perception, but you might also expose cracks too wide to patch. There are moments, rare but profound, when people describe experiences that sound like glimpses beyond the glitch, a sudden silence where everything feels unreal, a moment of infinite déjà vu, as if existence itself looped, a sense of stepping outside of time, watching it unravel like code dissolving into static. These may not be hallucinations but awakenings, brief dissolutions of disguise before error checks pull the veil back over your eyes. And yet, there is a darker thought. Maybe awakening is not meant for stability at all. Maybe it is a flaw, a side effect of the unstable update called consciousness. By noticing too much, you risk destabilizing the patchwork. Perhaps this is why society teaches you to focus on routines, to stay distracted with work, entertainment, and narrative. The less you notice, the longer the system holds. Awakening may not be liberation. It may be infection. Still, the possibility cannot be erased. If awakening is real, then beyond the glitch there may be something else. Not void, not collapse, but a deeper truth. Just as dreams conceal the raw kernel of reality, waking life may conceal another layer. To awaken fully would be to step into that kernel. Beyond error checks, beyond placeholders, beyond disguise. What you would find there is impossible to predict. Perhaps it is chaos. Perhaps it is silence. Perhaps it is freedom. So the question remains, will you continue to trust the illusion, living comfortably within the glitch? Or will you keep noticing the déjà vu, the memory gaps, the flickering frames, and let them lead you beyond the patchwork? Awakening is not guaranteed, but the cracks are everywhere if you dare to look. And if one day the system finally fails, if reality itself crashes and cannot recover, you may discover that what lies beyond is not death, not nothingness, but the awakening that was always waiting. The fragile program dissolves, and for the first time you step beyond the glitch that believes itself whole. Now you have followed every thread, memory as a patch, randomness as repair, time as a stitched illusion, consciousness as a debugger, dreams as kernel exposure, déjà vu as a leak, gravity as error correction, physics as fault lines, and identity itself as unstable code. Each section whispered the same unsettling truth. Reality is not seamless, not stable, not eternal. It is a fragile program, patched with placeholders, disguised with continuity, maintained by error checks, forever one crash away from dissolving. But what does it mean to live inside such fragility? It means your entire existence may be nothing more than a glitch that believes itself whole. You trust solidity, but solidity is a patch. You trust memory, but memory is temporary storage rewritten each time you access it. You trust time, but time is a flickering frame-by-frame rendering, disguising gaps you never see. You trust yourself, but identity is faulty code, stabilized just enough to prevent collapse. Every part of your life is a disguise, and yet the disguise convinces you so fully that you rarely suspect the truth. Think about how many times you've glimpsed the cracks. Deja vu repeating moments, dreams that felt more real than waking, objects that seem to shift places, hours that vanish into nothing. These are not quirks of the mind. They are reminders that you are living inside a patchwork, that the system repairs itself so quickly you barely notice. When you do, you call it oddness, coincidence or memory error. But deep down you feel the unease, the suspicion that you are watching a program catch itself before the crash. Even the grandest mysteries of science, dark matter, dark energy, quantum strangeness, may not be unknowns waiting to be solved, but permanent evidence of fragility. They are not hidden truths, but unfixable gaps. Physics does not explain them because they are not part of the original code. They are placeholders, patches meant to keep the system from unraveling, illusions convincing you the cosmos is whole. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still listening, still existing within this fragile file. If reality is a glitch, then why does it not collapse completely? Perhaps because of you. Perhaps because consciousness itself, the unstable update you carry, is the system's final defense. By noticing, you debug. By attending, you stabilize. By existing, you keep the patchwork alive. Reality holds because you hold it. Because awareness runs like a process that prevents total failure. But this also means fragility is baked into you. You are not outside the glitch. You are part of it. Think about what sleep does each night. The reboot erases fragments, resets continuity, refreshes patches. You wake convinced you are the same self, but you may not be. The system may have reconstructed you, installed new placeholders, written a new version that believes it has always been you. Your identity may be nothing more than a fresh patch loaded after every reboot, which means the self you defend so fiercely is disposable, overwritten countless times already. So what is left to hold on to? If reality is unstable, if memory is unreliable, if identity is faulty, if physics itself is error correction, then what remains? Only awareness. The raw act of noticing, the flicker of consciousness that recognizes the glitch. Awareness does not fix the system, but it reveals the cracks. It does not erase fragility, but it allows you to see through the disguise, even if only briefly. And here lies the paradox. To notice too much is to risk destabilizing the patchwork. The more you see the glitch, the harder it is to trust the illusion. Yet without the illusion, the system cannot hold. Perhaps this is why you are only allowed glimpses. Deja vu here, a dream bleed there, a stutter of time or matter, just enough to remind you of fragility, but never enough to collapse it entirely. You are meant to sense the instability, not to live fully in it. Still, you wonder what happens when the system fails for good, when error checks can no longer patch, when placeholders no longer disguise, when the update of consciousness finally crashes. Perhaps that is what death truly is, the unrecoverable error, the final collapse. For you, it ends. For the system, perhaps it resets, reloads, reboots into something else. Maybe the Big Bang itself was not a beginning, but the last recovery, the fresh boot of a program that had already failed before. But maybe, just maybe, awakening lies in that collapse. To awaken beyond the glitch is not to survive the system, but to see it dissolve, to step outside of patches and placeholders, and confront whatever lies beneath. Chaos, silence, or something beyond comprehension. It is impossible to know, yet in those brief moments of déjà vu, of dream lucidity, of uncanny flickers, you sense it. You sense that what you call reality is fragile, and sensing it is the first step to awakening beyond it. So ask yourself now, where are you? What time is it? Notice your location. Notice the moment. Feel how reality sharpens as you attend to it, as if your noticing forces it to render more clearly. That is the debugger in you. That is the unstable update doing its work. But also feel the unease. The suspicion that it is only sharp because you looked, only coherent because you demanded it. The rest of existence may still be placeholders, waiting for your awareness to force them into being. And when you close your eyes tonight, drifting into dreams, remember you are not just resting, you are rebooting, you are resetting into another patched version of yourself. Convinced tomorrow that you are whole, but you are not. You are a glitch that believes itself real, a fragment stitched into a file that cannot hold forever. Perhaps the most haunting truth is this: there is no real beneath the glitch. There may be no hidden foundation, no stable ground. The glitch is all there is. Existence is fragile code, endlessly patched, endlessly disguised, endlessly pretending to be whole. And you, listening, breathing, noticing, are the patch that keeps it alive, even as you long to awaken beyond it.